They mistook her silence for weakness, but it was grace. They mocked her smile, yet it never faded, because she had grace. Grace to kneel without shame, grace to love without limits, grace to carry pain and still give joy. My mother wore grace like a wrapper, wrapped tightly around her wounds, so the world would never see her bleed. She didn't fight with fists, she conquered with faith. And now I see, it wasn't weakness that made her stay, it was grace. She smiled through pain, she prayed through silence, she served in rejection, and they called her weak. But now I know, my mother was never weak. She was grace, walking in human form. They say love is blind, but I say love sees. And sometimes it chooses not to run. My name is Ifunanya, and I want to take you back in time to where my mother's pain began, to a time when she still believed that love could conquer all. Her name was Chinelo, born and raised in the Garden Hills of Enugu, the youngest daughter of a school teacher, a woman whose voice could calm storms, and whose smile even enemies respected. She met my father, Akinwale, during their NYSC posting, a handsome Yoruba man from Ondo. He had an accent like sweet honey, and his words, they were music wrapped in promises. For a year, he pursued her, sent handwritten letters filled with scripture, showed up with gifts she never asked for, and when she finally said yes, he told her, "I will build a house where your laughter will echo forever." Her family was hesitant. "Marry an Igbo man," they said. "Our ways are not theirs. Our pain is not theirs." But Chinelo believed in unity. She believed that love had no tribe. So with a heart full of dreams and a suitcase full of wrappers, my mother left her comfort zone and followed her husband to Ondo State. But the moment she stepped into his father's compound, the air changed. No one welcomed her with a song. No one clapped. Instead, eyes narrowed. Women whispered, "So this is the Igbo girl he brought. She looks proud already. These ones are clever. They'll own your house before you blink." My grandmother never greeted her, not once. She only stared, like Mama was a stain on her son's legacy. But Mama kept smiling. That night, she served food on her knees, washed plates with cold water, and slept on the floor beside my father's old room because the bed was for proper wives. And my father, he said nothing. No defense, no correction, just silence. Still, Mama stayed strong. She prayed. She woke before dawn to fetch water. She tried to learn the Yoruba language, though they mocked her accent. And when they asked her, "Why do you smile when they shame you?" she would say, "Because bitterness won't build me. I'm here to love, not to fight." But love, it has a way of growing cold when it's not watered. Akinwale changed after marriage. His once gentle voice now thundered. His laughter faded. He began to complain about little things. The way she cooked egusi, the way she braided her hair. "This is not Enugu, Chinelo. Learn our ways." My mother tried. She folded herself into pieces just to fit his world. She dressed in Iru and Buba. She greeted every elder on her knees. She even started attending his mother's church, hoping to win approval. But approval never came. And one day, I was born. A baby girl with eyes just like hers, deep, quiet, and watchful. You would think a child would soften the home. But no. Instead, my father distanced himself even more. He stayed out late, drank with friends, refused to carry me, and when Mama asked why, he replied, "You gave me a girl. What use is that? That night, I heard my mother cry, not loudly, not angrily, but quietly. The kind of cry that sits deep in the soul and doesn't beg for rescue. She thought I was asleep, but I wasn't. I lay there, my tiny fingers curled around the edge of her wrapper, wishing I could wipe her tears. Even as a baby, the next morning she smiled again, as if pain didn't visit her last night, as if disappointment wasn't cooking in her chest. That was my mother's way. She covered pain with dignity, dressed her wounds with prayers, and called it grace. Sometimes she would sit me down, braid my hair, and say, "If Nanya, you will be everything they said I could not be. You will rise, you will shine, and you will never beg for love." And I will nod, though I didn't understand. But now I do. I understand the strength of a woman who stays, not because she's weak, but because she's building something stronger than hatred, something deeper than anger, something eternal. Her name was Chinelo, my mother, a woman who entered a home of rejection and still planted seeds of love. This was where her pain began, in the hands of the man she once called her everything. They say when a woman marries, she lays her bed and lies in it. But what if that bed is made of thorns? What if the mattress is betrayal? The pillow, silence, and the blanket, disrespect? My mother, Chinelo, she didn't lie on a bed. She lay on a battlefield. And every night, she folded her pain neatly under her pillow. My father, Akinwale, had become a stranger in his own home. He would return home late, smelling of alcohol and perfume. Sometimes 3 nights would pass and we wouldn't hear his voice. But Mama, she never asked questions. She never yelled. She would heat his food at midnight, set his slippers by the door, and pray as he slept beside her like a stranger. She served him with a trembling grace, even when his words cut like machetes. "You're good for nothing. All you brought to my life is bad luck. Look at your face. I regret marrying you." My business collapsed the day I married an Igbo woman. My ears became familiar with those curses, like lullabies, poisonous lullabies that sank into my chest. My mother wore silence like a badge of honor. She would look at me after he stormed out and say, "Don't hate him, just grow better." But even still breaks with enough pressure. One Saturday evening, we had guests, his business partners. Mama cooked, cleaned, dressed beautifully. She wore the blue lace wrapper he liked, with gilly wrapped high like royalty. I watched her beam with pride as she served them. But the moment they left, he dragged her by her wrapper into the room and screamed, "Why were you smiling at them? Are you trying to seduce my friends?" Then came the blow. One slap, loud, quick, and I saw my mother fall. I was 9 years old, and I still remember that sound. The sound of her head hitting the side of the wooden bed frame. Blood dripped from her lip, and my father, he just stood there, breathing hard. Then he left. I ran to her, held her cold hand, cried over her broken lip. She looked at me, smiled through blood, and whispered, "I'm okay. You're okay. God is watching." That night, I slept beside her on the floor, her arms wrapped around me like a shield. But Mama didn't leave. People say, "Why didn't she run?" She could have, but she stayed. For me, for a dream, for a belief that made one day things would change. That maybe her child would grow up with both parents. That maybe enduring the storm was part of her divine assignment. The next morning, she went to church, covered her bruises with makeup, and led the women's prayer team. Nobody asked, nobody knew, or maybe they did and pretended not to. In that church, many women wore smiles with scars underneath. Some had matching bruises, but none of them ever spoke. Silence was our culture, endurance was our pride, and pain was the price of being called wife. That evening, Mama sat with me under the mango tree. The air was still, the sky pink and fading. She said, "Ifunanya, my pain is not just pain, it's a seed. I'm planting strength inside you. One day, when I'm gone, you remember all this and know how to stand. You won't just survive, you will soar." I didn't understand those words then, but now I know. She wasn't just talking to me, she was talking to every daughter watching her. Every woman in the shadows, every soul hiding behind. It is well, because deep down, my mother was building something eternal. Not with bricks, not with money, but with the quiet, invisible power of sacrifice. Still, the pain continued. Akinwale became worse. He brought women home openly, laughed with them in our sitting room, made Mama serve them drinks, and she did. Not because she was weak, but because she had already overcome. She told me once, "Never fear humiliation. My daughter, God is still God, even in disgrace." She began to lose weight. Her eyes sank. Her laughter became rare. But every morning, she prayed. She fasted. She anointed the doors. She gave even when we had nothing. And slowly, something began to change in me. I started watching her not as a victim, but as a warrior. Not as a woman broken, but as a woman chosen. She once told me, "They call me a fool for staying, but I'm not staying for a man. I'm staying for the future." And that future was me. Some people leave when the storm begins. Some stay, not because they are trapped, but because they are building something the storm cannot touch. My mother refused to leave. After all the insults, all the bruises, all the humiliations from the man she once called my crown, she stayed, not because she had nowhere to go. Her family in Enugu begged her to return. Her younger sister sent money. Her mother called every Sunday in tears, but Mama would simply say, "I'm not just a wife, I am a mother, a builder, a covering, a seed bearer. If I walk away now, what will my daughter learn about strength?" And strength she had. Strength like I had never seen in any woman. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that doesn't avoid praying. She kneels in prayer and stands in storms. After my father stopped giving us money, Mama found a way. With just 3,000 naira, she started roasting corn and pears by the roadside. Her hands smelled of smoke. Her eyes burned from the coal. But she smiled at every customer. She would say, "I may smell like smoke today, but tomorrow I will smell like success." People mocked her. Wife of a rich man selling roasted corn? Shame no dey catch her. But Mama, she just smiled. She wore her dignity like a rapper, tight and unshakable. Every evening, she would walk home with coins in a black nylon and count them like diamonds. Then she would iron my uniform, cook the last grains of rice, and sit with me under the old mango tree. She once told me, "I'm not poor, I am processing. There is gold in my pain. One day you will wear it as a crown." And I believed her. Even as a child, I saw that my mother was more than her circumstances. She was power, wrapped in silence. Akinwale, my father, noticed the shift. He saw how people in the community began to respect her. Women started calling her Mama Ifo, the fire. Young girls came to her for advice. Even some of his friends greeted her with bowed heads that made him angry. He hated that she was rising while he was sinking. His business has collapsed. His side chicks vanished. His ego cracked. One evening, in a rage, he threw her belongings outside. accused her of disrespecting him because she refused to kneel for his latest mistress. That night, my mother and I slept outside, under the stars, on bare cement, with only her wrapper covering us from the cold. I asked her, "Mama, are we going to die?" She smiled and said, "No, my baby, we are going to bloom." And that was the beginning of her breakthrough. The next morning, neighbors came out with wrappers and mats. They brought food. One woman even brought her basin of akara and said, "Chinelo, take. You fed me with your smile for years. Let me feed you now." That was the day I realized respect doesn't come from titles. It comes from consistency. That same week, a woman from the church offered my mother a small shop space to sell cooked rice and beans. Mama moved her business from roadside to the front of a primary school. She called it Mama Efo's Pot of Grace. Within 3 months, students, teachers, traders, they all lined up daily for her food. Her secret wasn't just the seasoning. It was her story, her smile, her energy. One teacher told me, "Your mother's food tastes like healing." Meanwhile, my father became invisible. People whispered about him now. The man who beat the woman that made him. The fool who lost the queen. And that made him worse. He drank more. Stayed out longer. Sometimes he didn't come home for a week. But Mama, she never spoke ill of him. Not once. Even when I was angry, she would correct me. "Don't insult your father, Efo. One day you will understand. We won't repay evil with evil. We repay it with growth." I watched her grow, not just financially, but spiritually. She became a leader in the women's fellowship. She began counseling young wives. She organized food drives for widows. She even started teaching teenage girls how to pray. She would say, "If I must cry, let my tears water a garden. If I must suffer, let my pain feed someone else." And one day, in the middle of all her service, I realized my mother had stopped surviving. She was now souring. The woman my father tried to break was now the woman others were running to for shelter. The woman he once called useless was now feeding half the street. And when people asked, "Chinelo, how do you do it? How are you still standing?" she would say, "Because I refuse to leave. Not the man, not the house, but my assignment." They say time heals, but sometimes it reveals. It shows you who people really are, what choices truly mean, and what grace really costs. My mother had become a light, a broken lamp that still burned with holy fire. And my father, a shadow of the man he once was. His business had collapsed, one after the other. His mistresses drained him, mocked him, and vanished. The big man, who once bought drinks for the whole street, now sat alone at beer parlors with nothing but regrets. The same men who praised him now shook their heads and said, "Ah, Akinwale, why did you treat that woman like that?" But pride is a poison. And even when he was drowning, my father refused to call her name until the day Mama fell ill. It started with tiredness. Then her legs began to swell. Her breath grew shorter. She smiled less often, but never complained. I had just finished my WAEC, ready for university. I watched the woman who once carried me on her back, now struggling to lift a bucket of water. I begged her to go to the hospital. She said she didn't have the time. There were widows to feed, girls to mentor, a church program to organize. But one night, her body gave up. She collapsed in the kitchen while boiling rice. I screamed. Neighbors rushed in. We took her to the general hospital. And guess who showed up? Akinwale, my father. For the first time in over 2 years, he entered the hospital like a lost child. He sat beside her bed, took her cold hand in his, and cried. Not the loud cry of a proud man, but the broken sob of a boy who realized too late what he had destroyed. Chinelo, he whispered, forgive me. I was blind. I was foolish. And Mama, even in pain, smiled gently and said, I already forgave you. The day I stopped needing your love to feel whole. Those words hit me like thunder. My mother, the same woman he broke, belittled and bruised, was now holding him like a child. He stayed with her in the hospital for weeks, bathed her, cooked for her, slept on the hard plastic chair beside her bed. The nurses were shocked. They had heard the stories, but now they saw the man humbled and the woman glowing even in sickness. One night, I sat beside her and asked, Mama, why are you letting him take care of you? She smiled and said, because everyone deserves a second chance. Even if they wasted it, it's not about him. It's about me. I can't carry bitterness to the grave. That night, I cried, not just for her pain, but for her grace, for the beauty of a woman who had every reason to hate, but chose to heal. I began to write. I poured everything into my journal, and later, I published a piece online titled, The Woman Who Fed Her Enemies. It went viral, over 200,000 views in a week. Emails flooded in from women all over Nigeria. Some said our story gave them strength. Some said it gave them the courage to live. Some said it helped them forgive. And one story had become a movement. Meanwhile, Papa stayed by her side, cooking jollof rice, massaging her legs with palm, praying aloud in broken Igbo. One evening, he sat beside me and whispered, Ifunanya, I failed. I let the devil use my pride. But your mother is a prophet, a queen, a saint I did not deserve. For the first time in my life, I saw my father not as a monster, but as a man, a deeply broken man, still begging heaven for mercy. But Mama didn't hold it against him. Even in her weakness, she told him, Akin, serve others now. Let your hands, which once destroyed, now build. That's how you redeem time. And he did. Papa began helping around the community, drove widows to market, painted the walls of the church, sat among men he once mocked and told his story. He said, I almost lost my crown because I couldn't see her light. My mother's pain had birthed his transformation. And me, I was ready for university. Mama held my hand on the morning of my departure and said, You are my answered prayer, my second chance. Go and shine. That would be the last time I saw her stand, because shortly after, her strength began to fade. But her impact, it was just beginning. They say when a seed dies in the ground, it doesn't end, it multiplies. My mother Chinelo, her life was a seed, her pain the water, her silence the sunlight, and me, I am the harvest. Shortly after I left for university in Enugu, Mama's body began to fail her. Her heart tired, her bones fragile, her breath labored, but her spirit as fierce as ever. She would tell the nurses, treat me gently, I still have a daughter to raise. Even on her hospital bed, she was ministering, praying for other patients, sharing food with children on the ward, smiling through pain. Papa never left her side. He washed her feet, fed her pap with trembling hands, sat at her bedside reading psalms in broken Igbo and Yoruba mixed together. And Mama would say, see what God can do with ashes. One Sunday morning, she called for me. I rushed back from school. I entered the hospital room. Her eyes were closed, but she knew I was there. She smiled and whispered, Ifunanya, my baby, I saw you in a dream, standing on stages, telling your story. And mine, you were shining, you were healing the broken. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't hold back the tears. I held her hand and said, Mama, you cannot leave now. I haven't bought you that house yet. And she chuckled weakly. Child, I already live in a mansion, the one your life is building. Then she looked at Papa and said softly, Akinwale, I release you. Live with purpose. Let my story be your redemption. That night, she closed her eyes. No sound, no struggle, just peace. She left the way she lived, gracefully. I didn't cry loudly at her burial. I had no voice left. Hundreds came, women she had mentored, market women, widows, pastors, students, people we didn't even know. They came in branded Ankara that read, Chinelo, the woman who bloomed through fire. One woman sobbed and said, she gave me hope when my husband poured hot water on me. Another said, she paid my daughter's school fees for 2 years. My father stood, shaking, and gave his eulogy. I was her greatest pain, but she was my only salvation. Chinelo loved me when I didn't love myself. She taught me grace. She forgave me when even God should have turned his back. I failed her, but I will honor her. And he did. After Mama's death, Papa became a new man. He sold our family house and used the money to build a shelter for abused women. He called it Chinelo's heaven. He became a speaker, going from church to church, school to school, teaching men about humility, healing, and how not to destroy their homes. He would say, a real man protects what he loves. I learned it too late. Don't wait like I did. As for me, I carried her story like fire in my bones. I started a blog, the daughter of a wounded queen. Then came the YouTube channel, then the public speaking. Soon, women from all tribes, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Urobo, Idoma, they began to gather, not just to hear me speak, but to share their own scars. Mama's story had become a bridge, and from it, I built the Bloom Foundation, a movement, a sisterhood, a lighthouse for those lost in storms. 1 year, on the anniversary of her death, I stood on the biggest stage in Lagos and said, my mother died, but she didn't die in vain. Her pain gave birth to purpose. Her tears watered a generation. Her silence echoed louder than screams. And the crowd stood, cheering, crying. I looked up, imagining her smiling from heaven, wearing the crown she was denied on earth. Sometimes I visit her grave. I kneel, I touch the soil, and I whisper, Mama, I did it. I became the woman you prayed for. Your pain built this. Your sacrifice carved my wings. You didn't just survive, you changed the world. This is the legacy of Chinelo, not the woman who suffered, but the woman who planted herself in sorrow and grew into a tree of healing. To every woman listening, your pain is not the end. It may look like loss, sound like defeat, feel like loneliness, but in the hands of God, your pain becomes purpose. Like Chinelo, you can rise. Your tears are seeds, your scars are strength, and your voice is a gift to the generation. Don't hide, don't shrink, don't let what broke you silence you, because one day someone will say, because she told her story, I found my healing. Moral lessons. Broken trust hurts generation. When trust is broken in a marriage, the pain doesn't stop with the couple. It passes down to the children and even future generations. Love should never excuse abuse. Enduring mistreatment in the name of love only prolongs suffering. True love respects, honors, and protects. Silence can be destructive. When people stay silent about their pain, they unknowingly pass it on. Healing begins when we speak up and seek help. Children see and remember everything. The way parents treat each other forms the blueprint for how their children understand love, respect, and relationships. Forgiveness heals but doesn't erase. Forgiveness is essential, but it doesn't undo the scars. We must be mindful of the pain we cause others. A strong woman can rise from deep pain. Even when deeply hurt, a woman can find strength in her sorrow and rebuild her life with dignity and grace. Men must be held accountable. Culture and tradition must never be used to excuse a man's cruelty. Responsibility and integrity are part of true manhood. Pain can birth purpose. Sometimes the deepest wounds birth the greatest missions, advocacy, healing, and the drive to protect others. Marriage requires mutual respect. One-sided sacrifice leads to resentment. Both partners must nurture, communicate, and honor each other for love to thrive. God sees and redeems the brokenhearted. No matter how deep the pain, there is hope in God. He heals, restores, and gives beauty for ashes. Isaiah 61 verse 3. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this story, do well to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscription button, turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories. Also share to your loved ones to learn one or two. Thank you.